My toxic husband stole our savings and tried to smuggle my stepdaughter out of state. He even gaslit her into believing I was mentally insane. So I exposed him and kicked him out for good. A year later, he's asking if we can be a family again. My husband sent his daughter away for looking like me, but I couldn't understand because when I first met my husband, he loved how I looked. He practically used to drool over me and even introduced me as his supermodel wife to his friends. So when he wanted me to meet his daughter so she could have a strong woman to look up to, I agreed. It was a moment I had been waiting for since the first day we met, and I was honored to have the opportunity to have a place in her life. Plus, Nicole was a ball of light, the type to brighten any room she walked into and put a smile on everyone's faces. I instantly loved her, and I knew I had gained her approval when we were getting ready for dinner, and she let me borrow her lip gloss. She was just 16, so she was at the age where she was really insecure about her body type. I'd often watch her scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, looking at girls she'd never be like because they're all at least 40% plastic. I tried to tell her this, and that's when she said something that changed our dynamic forever. "I just want to look like you," she blurted, seemingly out of nowhere. Tears came to my eyes. I was hit with a mix of rage and sadness, because one part of me just wanted her to see how beautiful she was, while another part was angry that she could even think that way about herself. Well, that's when my husband walked into the room. "You shouldn't think that way. Jane is too skinny. You're going to look like you have an ED." I froze. Our daughter Nicole just stared at him blankly. "So, you think I look like I have an ED?" I said, a sadness filling my chest. And instead of apologizing or saying that wasn't what he meant, he just said, "Well, you make it look good, but no one else would." Good. So my body, when I'm perfectly healthy, makes an ED look good? Tears filled my eyes, but there was no way I'd let Nicole see me cry. So I just retreated to the living room and curled up into a ball. Suddenly, all the memories hit me at once. The middle school boys telling me to eat a burger, my family relatives pinching my skin and saying, "Boys don't like thin girls." I thought it was all behind me, but it wasn't. After a few minutes, when my husband realized I was actually sad and not just looking for attention, he crawled onto the couch and sat beside me. But when he tried to hold my hand, I pulled away. "Baby, I'm sorry. You know I think you're beautiful." And maybe if this was our first incident surrounding my body type, it would have been fine. I could sweep it under the rug and call it a dumb mistake, but it wasn't. Far from it, actually. You see, a few months into marriage, my husband had asked me if I was planning on looking like this forever. When I asked what he meant, he said, "Well, don't you want to look a little fuller for my sake?" We then proceeded to have an hour-long conversation about how I was an investment, but if I don't start gaining weight, then it would make me a low return. But in my culture, divorce is basically equated to murder. So even as he made me lie awake at night, wondering why my own husband didn't find me attractive, I stayed. And after a few days, he came back apologizing. Apparently, he talked to a therapist who told him he was projecting his beliefs of not being good enough. I forgave him because I never expected it to happen again. But now it was happening again, right in front of our daughter. I finished the conversation by telling him that I wasn't changing my body for him, that he could either accept that and see a therapist again, or we're divorcing. I know that surprised him, because I'm usually pretty open to anything my husband wants. But this was a strong no. By the end of the day, he still didn't have an answer for me. So I went to stay with my dad. Honestly, I didn't even want to tell him what happened, because I knew he'd be livid. But even with the help of white wine and dumb Adam Sandler movies, I still couldn't stop myself from crying. He literally thought my husband was abusing me, so I had to tell him the truth. "What the actual F?" he yelled, echoing off the walls. He was seconds away from grabbing his rifle and hopping into the car. I had to pull his arms down back to the couch. "My love, I'm proud of you for not running straight to divorce. But if a man can't love you for who you are, then..." "No," I interrupted him. I don't know why I was so stubborn about staying with someone who was so obviously a walking red flag, but I fought tooth and nail for us. My dad just nodded and stroked my hair. "Well then, I hope you're okay with staying married to a walking dead man," he joked. That night, I got an Uber back home. My husband was still awake, teaching our daughter how to do geometry. I told him I was ready to work through things, and that idiot nodded. He even smiled. I was going to make him pay for how he made me feel, from the inside out. I started by taking inventory of our finances the next morning. If my husband was planning to take Nicole away from me, I needed to know what resources I had. I logged into our joint account while he was at work, and discovered something disturbing. Large transfers had been made to an account I didn't recognize. $5,000 last month, $3,000 the month before, all labeled vaguely as Nicole's future. My hands trembled as I took screenshots of the transactions, the cursor shaking across the screen. This wasn't about Nicole's college fund. We already had one set up that we both contributed to regularly. This was something else entirely. I heard the garage door opening and quickly closed the browser. My husband walked in, loosening his silk tie, the one I'd given him for our anniversary. "Hey," he said casually. "What are you up to?" "Just paying some bills," I replied, forcing a smile that felt like plastic on my face. "How was work?" "Fine." He glanced at my screen, which I'd switched to our electric bill. "Nicole texted me. She's staying late at study group. I told her I'd pick her up at 7. I can get her," I offered, trying to sound casual. "I need to run to the store anyway." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a muscle twitching beneath his skin. "No need. I've got it." Before I could argue, he headed upstairs to change. I waited until I heard the shower running, then grabbed my phone and texted Nicole. "Can we talk before your dad picks you up? It's important." She replied almost immediately. "Meet me at the library at 6:30. I'll tell him study group is running late." I deleted our conversation from my phone and grabbed my purse, my heart pounding against my ribs. The library was quiet when I arrived, the scent of old books and lemon cleaner filling the air. Nicole was sitting alone at a table in the back, surrounded by textbooks. Her face lit up when she saw me, but there was worry in her eyes, making her look older than 16. "What's going on?" she asked as I sat down, her voice barely above a whisper. I kept my voice low, leaning in close. "Has your dad mentioned anything about money to you? Maybe setting up an account?" She frowned, twisting a strand of hair around her finger nervously. "No. Why?" "I found some transfers from our joint account. Large amounts." Nicole bit her lip. "He did ask me for my social security number a few weeks ago. Said it was for some school paperwork." My stomach dropped. a cold feeling spreading through me. Nicole, I think he's setting something up in your name, possibly to move money where I can't access it. Her eyes widened. Why would he do that? I think he's preparing for something. I hesitated, not wanting to scare her. Has he said anything else about me? About us? She looked down at her hands, picking at a hangnail. He keeps saying you're not stable, that I shouldn't trust everything you say. Her voice cracked. Last night he asked if I'd be okay living with just him for a while if you needed to get help. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand, feeling how cold her fingers were. We need to be careful. Keep documenting everything, but don't let him see you doing it. Nicole nodded, then glanced at her watch, the one her father had given her for her birthday. You should go. He'll be here soon. I stood up, then hesitated. Nicole, no matter what happens, remember that I love you, and there's nothing wrong with how either of us looks. Her eyes filled with tears. I know. I hurried out of the library, my mind racing with possibilities, each worse than the last. I needed a plan. I needed help. I needed proof. When I got home, I called my father. Dad, I need a favor, I said when he answered, the familiar gruffness of his voice instantly comforting. Can you come over tomorrow when my husband's at work? And bring that friend of yours, the one who works in finance? The next day, my father arrived with his friend Ronald, a retired bank examiner with silver-rimmed glasses and a no-nonsense attitude. I showed them the account transfers and explained my suspicions. Ronald frowned as he studied the screenshots, his forehead creasing. These look like they're going to a custodial account, but the amounts and frequency are unusual for college savings. Could he be hiding assets? My father asked, his face darkening with anger, his hands clenching into fists. Possibly, Ronald said, adjusting his glasses, or setting up a financial situation that makes him look like the responsible parent. What can I do? I asked, feeling helpless for the first time in days. Ronald thought for a moment, tapping his pen against his notepad. Document everything, get copies of all financial records, and consult a lawyer, discreetly. After they left, I searched the house for any paperwork related to the mystery account. In my husband's home office, I found a folder labeled Nicole's Future, tucked behind some books on his shelf. Inside were documents for a custodial account with my husband as the trustee and Nicole as the beneficiary. The balance was over $30,000, money that had been siphoned from our joint savings over the past year. I photographed everything with shaking hands, then carefully returned the folder exactly as I'd found it. My hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped my phone, the reality of what was happening finally sinking in. That evening, my husband was unusually attentive. He brought home takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and suggested we watch a movie together, just the three of us. Like old times, he said, smiling at Nicole and me, his voice warm, but his eyes calculating. Nicole caught my eye across the room, and I could see her discomfort in the tight set of her shoulders. We both knew what was happening. He was creating a narrative, a picture of family harmony that contradicted what I'd been saying. During the movie, he kept making comments about how thin I looked, disguised as concern, each word dripping with false sweetness. Babe, you've barely touched your pad thai. Are you feeling okay? Jane, that shirt looks so loose on you. Have you lost more weight? Each comment was delivered with a smile, but his eyes were cold as winter. Nicole noticed too. I saw her flinch each time, her fingers tightening around her water glass. After Nicole went to bed, my husband sat next to me on the couch, putting his arm around my shoulders, the weight of it feeling like a trap. I've been thinking, he said, his voice gentle but with an edge I'd come to recognize. Maybe you should take some time for yourself. Get away for a bit. Focus on your health. I stiffened under his touch. What do you mean? You seem stressed. And you're getting so thin again. He squeezed my shoulder, his fingers digging in slightly. I'm worried about you. About your influence on Nicole, too. I pulled away from him, the fabric of the couch rough against my palms. My influence? She looks up to you so much, he said, his tone reasonable, practiced. But she's at an impressionable age. If she starts thinking your body type is the ideal, stop, I said firmly, finding strength in my anger. Just stop, he sighed, as if I was being difficult. A child who wouldn't listen to reason. This is exactly what I mean. You get so defensive about this topic. It's not healthy, Jane. I stood up, my legs steadier than I expected. I'm going to bed. As I walked away, he called after me, his voice honeyed again. I'm just trying to help. I love you. I didn't respond, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. In our bedroom, I locked the door and called my father again, my voice barely above a whisper. Dad, I need the name of a good lawyer. Tomorrow. The next day, while my husband was at work, I met with Abigail Barnes, a family law attorney my father recommended. Her office smelled of coffee and leather, and her handshake was firm and reassuring. I brought copies of all the financial documents I'd found, along with my journal detailing my husband's behavior. Abigail reviewed everything carefully, her expression growing more concerned as she read, occasionally making notes in a leather-bound notebook. This is a clear pattern of financial deception and emotional manipulation, she said finally, looking up at me with serious eyes. He's systematically undermining your relationship with Nicole while creating a paper trail that makes you look unstable. What can I do? I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. We need to act quickly, but carefully, she advised, leaning forward. If you confront him directly, he might escalate. We need to gather more evidence and prepare for what could be a difficult custody battle. Nicole isn't even my biological daughter, I reminded her, my heart sinking at the thought of losing her. But you've been her stepmother for years, and there's clear evidence that removing her from your care would be harmful to her, Abigail assured me, her confidence bolstering my own, especially given your husband's manipulative behavior. She helped me develop a plan, continue documenting everything, secure copies of all important documents, and prepare financially for independence. She also suggested I record conversations when legal and maintain a strong relationship with Nicole without directly undermining her father. The most important thing, Abigail emphasized, tapping her pen for emphasis, is to protect yourself and Nicole without tipping your hand too soon. I left her office feeling both terrified and empowered. I had a plan now. I wasn't alone. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a secret agent in my own home. I recorded conversations on my phone, kept detailed notes in a password-protected app, and made copies of every financial document I could find. I discovered my husband had been lying about his income. He was making significantly more than he'd told me, nearly double what I thought. I also found emails to a realtor about houses in another state, the images of spacious backyards and modern kitchens making my blood run cold. He was planning to leave with Nicole. The realization hit me like a physical blow, leaving me breathless as I stared at the screen. Meanwhile, his behavior toward me grew increasingly controlling. He started commenting on everything I ate, making a show of being concerned when I skipped meals because of stress. He suggested to our friends that I might have an eating disorder, always framing it as worry rather than criticism, his voice dripping with false concern. "I'm just so worried about Jane," he'd say, squeezing my hand too tightly. "She hardly touches her food these days." The worst part was watching him manipulate Nicole. He'd make subtle comments about my appearance when she was around, then follow up with praise about how healthy and normal she looked in comparison. I could see her confusion and discomfort, caught between us like a leaf in a storm. One night I overheard them arguing in her room, their voices carrying through the thin walls. "Dad, stop talking about Jane like that," Nicole said, her voice trembling but determined. "There's nothing wrong with how she looks." "I'm not saying there's something wrong," he replied smoothly, his voice the same one he used to close business deals. "I'm just concerned about her health, and yours. You've been spending so much time with her lately, and I've noticed you're eating less." "That's not because of Jane," Nicole protested, her voice rising slightly. "Isn't it?" His voice was gentle but insistent, a velvet-covered knife. "You've always been impressionable, sweetheart. Remember when you wanted to dye your hair purple because that YouTuber did?" I slipped away before they could notice me, my heart breaking for Nicole. He was twisting everything, making her doubt herself and me, using her natural teenage insecurity as a weapon. The next day, Nicole found me alone in the kitchen and whispered, her eyes darting nervously toward the door. "He's trying to get me to sign something, papers about guardianship if something happens to him." My blood ran cold, goosebumps rising on my arms despite the warm kitchen. "Did you sign them?" She shook her head, her ponytail swinging. I said I needed to think about it. He got really upset. "Nicole, don't sign anything," I urged, keeping my voice low. "No matter what he says." She nodded, then quickly moved away as we heard footsteps approaching, the familiar heavy tread of my husband's expensive shoes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my husband's steady breathing beside me filling me with dread. How had we gotten here? How had the man who once claimed to adore me become someone who was actively trying to destroy me? The moonlight cast eerie shadows across our bedroom walls, and I watched them shift and change as clouds passed overhead. Every creak of the house made me tense, as if the very building was conspiring against me. I slipped out of bed and went to check on Nicole. Her light was still on, and I knocked softly before opening the door. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through her phone. When she saw me, she quickly wiped away tears with the sleeve of her pajama top. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting beside her on the purple comforter she'd picked out last year. She showed me her phone. It was open to Instagram, displaying a photo of a painfully thin model in a bikini, her ribs clearly visible. "Dad sent me this," she whispered, her voice small. He said, "This is what happens when you follow Jane's example." Rage boiled inside me, hot and fierce, but I forced myself to stay calm for Nicole's sake, taking a deep breath before speaking. "That's manipulation, Nicole. He's trying to scare you." "I know," she said, her voice stronger than I expected, a flash of defiance in her eyes. "I'm not stupid. I see what he's doing." I hugged her tightly, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "You're the smartest person I know." The next day, things escalated. My husband announced at breakfast that he'd scheduled a family therapy session, his tone casual as he buttered his toast. "I think we all need to talk about some issues," he said, looking pointedly at me, "especially about healthy body image." Nicole glanced at me nervously, her spoon pausing halfway to her mouth. "That sounds like a good idea," I said, surprising both of them with my calm agreement. "When is it?" "Tomorrow afternoon," he replied, clearly thrown by my acceptance. "I've already cleared it with Nicole's school." I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. "I'll be there." After he left for work, Nicole turned to me, her eyes wide. "Are you really going?" "Absolutely," I said, already forming a plan. "But I'm calling the therapist first." I found the therapist's card on the counter, Dr. Miles Perry. I called his office and explained that my husband had scheduled an appointment, but that I had some concerns I wanted to discuss privately first. To my surprise, Dr. Perry agreed to see me that same day, his receptionist fitting me in during a last-minute cancellation. His office was warm and inviting, with comfortable chairs and soft lighting that seemed designed to put people at ease. The walls were painted a soothing sage green, and a small desktop fountain bubbled quietly in the corner, its gentle sound immediately calming my frayed nerves. Dr. Perry himself was a middle-aged man with kind eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses, and a thoughtful demeanor that immediately made me feel safer. "Mrs. Kowalczyk," he greeted me, his handshake firm but gentle. "What can I help you with today?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the attempts to turn Nicole against me. I showed him some of the text messages and financial documents, my hands shaking slightly as I passed him my phone. Dr. Perry listened without interruption, his expression growing more concerned with each detail, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "What you're describing," he said when I finished, his voice measured but serious, "sounds like emotional abuse and parental alienation. I'm troubled that your husband would use therapy as part of this pattern." Relief washed over me, making my eyes sting with tears. He believed me. "What should I do about tomorrow's session?" I asked, twisting my wedding ring nervously. He thought for a moment, tapping his pen against his notepad. "Come to the session. I'll be aware of the dynamics now, and I won't allow him to use my office as a platform for further manipulation." In fact, this might be an opportunity to address these issues in a controlled environment. I left feeling cautiously optimistic, the weight on my shoulders slightly lighter. For the first time in months, Someone with authority would witness my husband's behavior firsthand. That evening, my husband was unusually tense. He kept checking his phone and making excuses to leave the room for private calls, his voice a low murmur behind closed doors. I pretended not to notice, but my instincts were screaming that something was wrong, a familiar knot forming in my stomach. The air in the house felt thick with tension, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. Even the normal household sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock in the hallway, seemed amplified in the strained silence between us. After Nicole went to bed, he confronted me in our bedroom, his face tight with barely controlled anger. "Did you go see Dr. Perry today?" he demanded, standing between me and the door. My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral, years of practice helping me maintain my composure. "Yes, I did. I wanted to make sure I was prepared for tomorrow." His face darkened, a flush creeping up his neck. "Prepared? What does that mean?" "It means I want this therapy to work," I said calmly, meeting his gaze steadily. "I want us to address the real issues in our family." He stared at me for a long moment, then his expression shifted to something softer, more calculated, a mask sliding into place. "I want that too," he said, reaching for my hand, his touch making my skin crawl. "I'm sorry if I've been harsh lately. I just worry about you, about us." I allowed him to hold my hand, fighting the urge to pull away. "I know." He pulled me closer, kissing my forehead. "Let's make tomorrow a fresh start, okay?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As he held me, I could feel the tension in his body, the insincerity in his embrace. He was planning something. I was sure of it. The next morning, I woke to find his side of the bed empty, the sheets cold. I checked the time, 6:30 a.m. Usually he didn't leave for work until 8. I got up and checked Nicole's room, my heart pounding. Her bed was empty too, the covers thrown back hastily. Panic surged through me, hot and electric. I ran downstairs calling their names, my voice echoing in the empty house. No answer. My husband's car was gone from the garage, the space it usually occupied mockingly empty. With shaking hands, I called Nicole's phone. It went straight to voicemail, her cheerful greeting now ominous. I tried my husband next. Same result. I was about to call the police when I noticed a note on the kitchen counter, held down by the salt shaker. "Taking Nicole to see her grandmother before therapy. Back by noon. H." His mother lived 3 hours away in a retirement community. There was no way they'd be back by noon for our 1 p.m. appointment with Dr. Perry. I called my lawyer immediately, my fingers fumbling with the phone. "He's taken her," I said as soon as Abigail answered, my voice high with panic. "Left a note saying they're visiting his mother, but something feels wrong." "Stay calm," Abigail advised, her voice steady and professional. "Does he have a right to take her places without your permission?" "Yes, he's her father," I admitted, pacing the kitchen. "But this is different. We had the therapy appointment today. He knows I talked to the therapist yesterday." "Call his mother," Abigail suggested. "See if they're actually there or planning to be there." I hung up and called my mother-in-law, my fingers tapping impatiently as the phone rang. She sounded surprised to hear from me, her voice thin and wavering with age. "No, dear, I haven't spoken to them," she said. "Are they coming to visit?" My stomach dropped, a cold weight settling in my core. "They're supposed to be on their way to you right now." "Well, this is the first I'm hearing of it," she replied, confusion in her voice. "Is everything all right?" I thanked her and hung up, then called Abigail back, my voice steadier now, fueled by determination rather than panic. "They're not going to his mother's," I told her. "He lied." "I'm coming over," she said decisively. "Don't call the police yet. If he has legal custody, they may not consider this abduction. We need to be strategic." While waiting for Abigail, I searched the house for clues, moving from room to room with growing desperation. In my husband's office, I found his computer still on. He must have left in a hurry. I checked his browser history and found searches for flights to Arizona, where his brother lived, the screen showing multiple searches for one-way tickets. When Abigail arrived, her suit crisp despite the early hour, I showed her what I'd found, the evidence of his planning laid out on the screen. "He's planning to establish residency in another state," she said grimly, her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's a common tactic in custody disputes. If he can get Nicole settled there, it becomes much harder for you to fight for custody." "What do we do?" I asked, trying to keep the panic from my voice, my nails digging into my palms. "We file for an emergency custody order," she said, already pulling out her laptop from her leather briefcase, "based on the evidence of manipulation and financial deception, and we try to find them before they leave the state." While Abigail prepared the legal documents, I called everyone who might know where they were, my husband's friends, colleagues, even his brother in Arizona, who seemed genuinely confused by my call, his voice tinged with concern. Hours passed with no word, the silence of my phone increasingly ominous. The therapy appointment time came and went. I was beside myself with worry, imagining Nicole confused and scared, being told more lies about me, being taken farther away with each passing minute. The house felt impossibly empty and still, the ticking of the wall clock in the kitchen marking each second that passed without news. Then, at 3:42 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Nicole. "Airport, gate B12. Dad says we're visiting Uncle David for a few days. He took my phone, but I'm using the bathroom now. Help." I showed the message to Abigail, who immediately called the airport security, her voice authoritative as she explained the situation. "We need to get there now," she said, grabbing her keys from the table. "I've filed the emergency order, but it will take time to process. Our best bet is to intercept them before they board." We raced to the airport, Abigail calling contacts in family court the entire way, her voice urgent but professional. By some miracle, she managed to get a judge to verbally approve a temporary order preventing Nicole from leaving the state, her legal connections proving invaluable. At the airport, we rushed to gate B12, where a flight to Phoenix was boarding, passengers lining up with their boarding passes. I spotted them immediately, my husband holding their boarding passes, Nicole standing beside him, her face pale and strained, her eyes scanning the crowd as if looking for rescue. "Nicole!" I called out, my voice carrying across the gate area. She turned, her eyes widening with relief. My husband grabbed her arm, trying to pull her toward the gate, his fingers digging into her sleeve. "Jane, what are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice tight with anger but trying to maintain a calm facade. "Stopping you from kidnapping my daughter," I said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, several heads turning our way. He laughed, though I could see the panic in his eyes, the slight twitch in his left cheek that always appeared when he was cornered. "Don't be ridiculous. We're just visiting my brother. Tell her, Nicole." Nicole looked between us, then pulled away from her father, her movement decisive. "I don't want to go," she said clearly, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "You said Mom was coming too." The lie hung in the air between us, exposing his deception. Several passengers had stopped to watch the scene unfold, their expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. Abigail stepped forward, presenting the court order to an approaching security officer, her manner calm but authoritative. "This man is attempting to remove a minor from the state against a court order," she explained. "We have reason to believe he's fleeing with her." The security officer reviewed the document, then turned to my husband, his hand moving to rest on his radio. "Sir, I need you to step aside with me." My husband's face contorted with rage, the mask of civility finally slipping completely. "This is absurd. She's my daughter." "Dad, stop," Nicole pleaded, moving to stand beside me, her shoulder pressing against mine. "Just stop lying." For a moment, I thought he might try to grab her, to run, but surrounded by security and onlookers, he had nowhere to go, his options evaporating before his eyes. As security led him away, Nicole collapsed against me, sobbing, her whole body shaking. "I was so scared," she whispered against my shoulder. "He said you were trying to hurt me, that we needed to get away from you." I held her tightly, my own tears flowing freely, mingling with hers. "It's okay now," I promised, stroking her hair. "He can't take you away from me." But even as I said the words, I knew this was just the beginning of our fight. My husband wouldn't give up easily. He'd use every trick, every manipulation to try to get Nicole back and punish me for stopping him. But for the first time in months, I felt strong. I had evidence, I had support, and most importantly, I had Nicole's trust. Together, we would face whatever came next. As we left the airport, Nicole squeezed my hand. "You know what's funny?" she said, a small smile breaking through her tears, her face looking younger again. "All this time, he kept saying there was something wrong with how you look, but the only ugly thing I see is how he acts." I hugged her close, marveling at her wisdom beyond her years. "You're right," I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "And that's something no amount of changing can fix." The next few months were a blur of legal meetings, court hearings, and rebuilding our lives piece by piece. My husband fought hard, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The psychological evaluations revealed his controlling tendencies and the damage he was causing Nicole, the therapist's testimony particularly damning. In the end, we reached a settlement. I received primary custody of Nicole, with my husband granted supervised visitation that would be reevaluated after a year of therapy. The court sealed his psychological report, but with the condition it would be unsealed if he violated our agreement, a sword hanging over his head. Nicole and I moved into a small but bright apartment closer to her school, the walls painted in colors we chose together. She joined a body-positive art club and was thriving, her smile returning more often each day. I rediscovered my passion for photography, taking evening classes that brought me joy and a sense of purpose beyond survival. One evening, as we cooked dinner together, Nicole bumped my hip with hers and handed me a small tube, the cherry-scented lip gloss she'd let me borrow when we first met, the seal still unbroken on a new tube. "I thought you might want it back," she said with a smile that reached her eyes, "since it looks so good on you." I applied a little and struck a ridiculous pose that made her laugh, the sound filling our kitchen like music. "How do I look?" "Perfect," she said, hugging me tight, "exactly like yourself."